to play. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
When the night is brown like my Hennessy, all I want is for you to twerk on me. I know y'all was confused because usually Brother Dalton has a turn up gospel music.
Yes, he
so I'm like,
does.
twerk for God, go twerk for God. Yo, sometimes I walk in here, I'm like, did they get a new DJ in here? Like, I'm coming in here, my shoulders moving, and I finally start listening to the lyrics. Jesus Christ is my savior. Brr. I'm like, they got gospel trap music now?
I love gospel trap.
Yeah, I think Brother Dalton makes all the songs before he comes in the studio. Anyways, guys, this is Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you're just tuning in, good. We just started. What's going on to the folks on Facebook Live? What's going on to the folks on the FM frequency? What's going on to the folks who are listening on the podcast and they are wondering what we're talking about because I cut that song out from the beginning? Well, I'm happy to talk to you. This is Stanley Fritz. You can find me on Twitter at Stan Fritz, on Facebook at Stanley Fritz, but I only have 90 slots left of friendship, and after that, Facebook will tell me I have too many friends and we can't talk anymore, so hurry up. We're also on Instagram at Stan Fritz. You can talk to me there. I am in a room surrounded by two amazing black women, and guess what they're doing right now? They're trying to figure out which headphone works. And in order to kill time, to let them figure out which headphones work, I will keep on talking my talk. I took a trip to Albany yesterday, and I went to the Blackout Festival, hosted by Citizen Action of New York, but run by Amy Jones and Cleanna. And they put this event together with all their black girl magic, and I had a blast. And that's why I heard that song, Twerk for Me. And I thought to myself through my third sip of Hennessy and my fifth glass, I said, I've got to play this song. And we played it, and it is good. And now, who else am I in the studio with? Selena, talk to me, beloved.
Is your soliloquy done?
I know you're not talking. You was looking for a working headphone, sis.
Anyway, yes, welcome to Let Your Voice Be Heard, where we talk politics, social issues, pop culture, and Stanley's drunkenness, apparently. I'm glad you're not hungover.
I don't drink anymore. I haven't drunk in
7 days.
I've been drunk.
7 hours.
Like 8 hours. Now.
8 hours. Yeah, right. Exactly. So we are actually live here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. But shout out to everyone who is listening via podcast on iHeart, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or Google. We appreciate you just as much. My name is Selena Hill. On Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at Miss Selena Hill. And if you're listening live or on a Sunday, make sure you check out my Instagram because I will be going to Black Girls Rock. Super excited about that. And you can follow my story there. Tiffany?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Tiffany, Tiffliz B on all social media.
Do you not give your last name?
Oh, Tiffany Brown.
No, I thought it was private. I thought you were
No.
Why you put on the spot then?
I mean, I also have like a really, typical name, so I'm not too concerned about people knowing my first and last name.
Tiffany, black woman. Brown.
Yes. Maybe that could be like my stage name.
Well, separate the BR from the OWN and you get Brown versus Board of Education. Open up your third eye, beloved.
I didn't notice that.
That's because I just made it up.
Okay, Umar.
Chill. Don't do that to me. I'm not raising money to not open up a school, all right? Selena, what are we talking about today? Help us. Save me from myself.
Seriously. So I don't know if you guys have been following the 1619 Project. That is a new series that the New York Times released a few days ago. And it's really digging deep into the legacy of slavery in a way that is not commonly taught or discussed. I think many of us are very familiar with the ugly past of this country, but I don't think a lot of us know how much it affects us today, like how it affects our healthcare, our transportation. Like the roots of slavery run deep. So the New York Times released this, and conservatives, particularly white conservatives, have been up in arms saying that this is divisive and all this next stuff. So we're going to take a really deep dive into the 1619 Project and why it's so important to unpack our history and the truth behind it. So I'm super looking forward to that. We also have some news stories we're going to be talking about. And of course, if you want to let your voice be heard, you can call us up at 212-650-6903. 03. You can also tweet us at BeHeard_radio. And if you are watching via Facebook Live, like Cleanna and Claudia, you can leave us a comment there. That's facebook.com/letyourvoicebeheard. We're going on a quick break, but we will be right back.
Stanley ain't if she already know that. Black men don't cheat. You already know that. Hey. If we're going to celebrate blackness, let's celebrate the faithfulness of every single black king. He's not cheating, beloved. He's multitasking. Forgive that king. Would it be black love if he didn't ruin your life at least one time on some nonsense, beloved? Listen, open your third eye. He's not cheating. He saw another black queen or maybe a black king that he wanted to help empower, so he did. But he came right back to you. So what are you upset about? We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley, Faithful Black King Fritz, here with Selena Hill, and of course, Tiffany, Bad Bobby, Pension Brown. And we got a big show for you guys, but before we get to the big part of the show, we got to get to the important part of the show, which is the news roundup. Things that happen in the news that made you laugh, curse, cry, flip a table, or just scratch your head. And I know Selena has some news stories she wants to share, so I'm going to let her go first. But if you guys have any stories, give us a call at 212-650-6903. Again, that's 212-650-6903. On Facebook Live, leave us a comment, and we'll read it unless you say black men do cheat, then we're blocking you. Selena?
Thank you, Stanley. And shout out to you for playing that new Little Duval song.
That's old.
Oh, when did it come out?
Like 3 months ago.
Okay, so that's old. Okay, whatever.
It's not old.
Anyway, black men don't cheat. I really appreciate the campaign because I feel like you guys are changing the narrative. And maybe if you guys actually embrace it, black men won't cheat. Nonetheless.
Because we don't. At all.
Right. Anyway, so nonetheless, there were a couple of things that, a lot of things that stood out last week. Conservative billionaire David H. Koch, he has died at the age of 79.
People die every day, B.
But you know what? The legacy that he left as someone who really empowered Republicans and conservatives to push their agendas and to run for office. It's like the pipelines that he created are still here and still resonate. Tiffany, how did you feel about the passing of conservative billionaire David H. Koch?
How you feel, Queen?
I'm not one of those people that celebrate death.
Okay.
I'm indifferent to it. I do understand why some people do that. I'm not gonna hoot and holler. I just think that's just how I am. But I understand it. But he has changed the face of politics. Even if you think about student politics, when I used to work for a student organization, he was funding student a Republican or conservative organization. So his presence and his money has really shaped and crafted a lot of our policies that, impact marginalized and, underrepresented communities. So, see ya. No, I won't see him because he's going to be in hell. So
thank you for your diplomatic response. Stanley had a much less diplomatic response on Twitter, I think.
No, I didn't.
What did you say, Stanley?
Response. He's dead. Listen, I know his brother must be in a lot of pain. I hope they get to reunite very soon.
Stanley!
What? I'm trying to send my condolences. I don't see what the problem is. Listen, he spent his entire life funding policies that hurt and kill black and brown people.
But however, they were also for prison reform.
No, they weren't. He owned a company that monetizes criminal justice. He makes money off of prisoners, whether they're in the jails and prisons or not.
Oh, with the tracking devices.
Yes.
Yeah. That's still prison.
Yeah, man.
Well,
have fun at home. I mean, hell.
Well, I'll say this. They also did put a lot of money behind cancer research.
Yeah, because he had pancreatic cancer.
He wasn't trying to die at 79.
Yeah, fam. He got pancreatic cancer 27 years ago. That's the kind of health insurance that black people should have. Where you get the crazy cancer and you still live a full life.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, you're right. And
I have no remorse for his death. Shoot, I'll throw some salt on his grave. Where it's at.
Stan, well, you know what? I am done trying to play devil's advocate. R.I.P.
The devil is with him now. He's good. He's Gucci.
Speaking of the devil.
Let's see how much that money helps you in the grave.
Well, speaking of that, Donald Trump has imposed a new immigration policy. We already know that he was putting children in cages and detaining children, keeping them away from their parents. And now I think that there's a new rule to say that they would have to stay there indefinitely. Horrible. Stanley?
Yo, listen. I told y'all I screamed till I was blue in the face to vote for that white woman. You guys did not listen to me.
No, you're right.
And this is what we get. At this point, there's nothing left to do but just make sure you show up and vote and get him out of office. But not just him, all these crazy racist apologizing Republicans and the problematic Democrats. Get them all out of office. That's all we can do. Because you think this is bad. What about the stuff that you don't know that he's doing? Come on. They're tracking black activists right now and saying that they're just as bad as ISIS. You know what that looks like? Not good for anybody in this room.
Tiffany?
I will also ask a slight deviation. There was a new policy with affordable housing that also impacts the undocumented immigrant community, which they will no longer be required to have like a TIN number or a social security number because it makes it harder for them to have access to the affordable housing list. So I guess to say, even though we have this, this new Trump immigration policy, we do have other politicians that are trying to make it easier for undocumented populations to, live, and be included in a part of society. So.
I mean, can we stop talking about Trump and Koch now? I have some other news for folks.
Okay.
Yes, go
ahead,
I guess
it's Trump related. So Jay-Z is not getting an ownership stake in the NFL. And I know we talked about a rumor last week where they were saying Jay-Z told Jermaine Dupri not to make a deal with the NFL. Jermaine Dupri has come out and said that has not happened. With these two new pieces of information, have your opinions about the whole ordeal changed? Because I know me and Selena got into a huge argument with Josh last week talking about this NFL deal.
You know what? I'm going to defer to Tiffany first because you weren't on last week's show. What do you think about the Jay-Z NFL Rock Nation deal, Tiff?
I think it was disheartening. I think the optics of the whole deal, I think that's what a lot of people are probably really riled up about. And we've also seen Jay-Z's track record when it comes to the Barclays Center. I think we need to expect more from our billionaires and not just think that a seat at the table is worthy. I'm sorry. We went on this whole 2-year campaign of not watching NFL and, making sure and talking about police brutality. We are still being killed on camera. If that's what Jay-Z wants to do, at the end of the day, he's a capitalist, and this is the type of society that we live in. But I also think that I'm not going to look at Jay-Z or any of these billionaires to save or even talk about black liberation in any real way because, I'm sorry, being a black capitalist or having some sort of, mirrored seat at the table is not black liberation.
Sorry, go ahead, Selena.
No, I would say, and to Tiffany's point, because I understand that sentiment, and obviously there's strong argument and passion on both sides of this debate. I don't think what you're saying could be argued. I do think that there's different perspectives. I think that Jay-Z has been an unapologetic capitalist from the start. I mean, he's rapped about it. He's taught us how to move in a room full of vultures. Like, he's been making these deals. That's why he became a billionaire. I mean,
allegedly.
Right.
But who knew he was the vulture?
I would say this. I know for a fact that, yes, Jay-Z is going to have some type of stake. It is going to benefit him because he is an advocate for building generational wealth and, getting that bag.
That's himself.
Right. But the thing is, he's never claimed to be an activist or an organizer. Yes, he has moved in social justice circles, and as Tiffany said, he has a strong track record in funding and advocating for black and brown lives through Black Lives Matter, through giving large donations, funding the Trayvon Martin docuseries, as well as many others. And those were his choices, and we celebrated that. Now he's doing a deal with the NFL. I truly believe that he thinks he's the only person that could bridge that gap between the NFL and the disconnect they have with people of color because of what they did to and what they continue to do to Colin Kaepernick. I do think that this deal should not be celebrated, nor should it be condemned. We need to let it play out because we never know what's going to happen in a year or 5 years from now.
So I'll just close my thoughts out on this with this. Jay-Z has done a lot of good things and put his money where his mouth is on a lot of issues that are important to me.
Yes.
And I'll give him props for that. But just like I give him props when he does good things, when he does something that looks wild, nasty, I'm going to call it out. And anybody who knows me knows I've always worshiped Jay-Z. This is nasty, no matter how you put it. Who chose you? That's the problem with a lot of stuff that happens in this movement. There's a lot of men who choose themselves to do things when people have been putting in the work and the emotional labor for years. Nobody chose you. The players didn't even choose you. So why do you think that you're the only one that can do this?
Well, Stanley, we're projecting. Hold on. We're getting really good comments. BB Mendez left a comment on our Facebook Live. She says, leave Hove alone. He is doing big things. Whether Jay-Z sits at the table or not, black killings aren't going to stop.
Then why is he there?
Hold on, Stanley. But in order for us to move forward and gain ownership In order to have true power, we must have a seat at the table and play the game. However, Cleanna has responded. She says, capitalism saves no one. There must always be someone under the wheel. So again, we're getting responses on both sides of this debate.
I posted my article I put in Black Youth Project about all the reasons why this deal is nasty, not just about Kaepernick. Not every table is a good table, and just because you're at the table doesn't mean you're in the conversation. You could be the meal.
Tiffany, closing thoughts?
I would also say that it is not up to Jay-Z to say that we are past kneeling, and I think that's one of the most disrespectful comments that he can ever say.
Can I just clarify that? I was in the room when he said that, and I had a chance to speak to Jay-Z about this. Honestly, I feel like it was taken out of context. I know that they're just releasing, because he didn't, when he said we're past kneeling, what he was saying in full context is what is the action that we're taking place. Jay-Z was saying, besides those who continue to kneel and who want to kneel, I want to take the take a knee movement to the next level by going and working with the NFL to make the necessary changes that it needs.
Kaepernick had already taken it to the next level. He was doing know your rights trainings and giving social justice
outside
groups
of the
money.
NFL. He wants to work inside the NFL.
He wants to work inside the NFL.
Yes, because it needs to be changed.
Selena, the NFL did not say they were wrong for blackballing Kaepernick. They never even said that maybe they should have done things differently. They said he's going to help us with our music and our social justice initiatives that they wouldn't have had without Kaepernick. The only time they ever acknowledged this black man was when they were asked by people like you in the room, what about Kaepernick? There's no moving on. You can't move on if there was never accountability. There's everyone wants to always that's the problem with this work. We can move on. We can build forward. But if you're not being held accountable, we can't move past nothing. When have they been held accountable?
He's not saying move past it, like stop kneeling. He's saying let's take action. And put it like this. Jay-Z, he's brilliant when it comes to, rapping. He didn't have talking points. He didn't have a publicist. He didn't have somewhere articulating and spinning the argument while we were in the room, and he was taking questions from journalists for an hour. He was speaking from the heart. And if you follow Jay-Z, you know that he's really eloquent in his raps, but he keeps it real. And he's maybe not the best speaker when it comes to just, having when it comes to talking about something that has such pressure around it.
I ain't one of them house ends you bought. Guess you are.
All right. So we're going to have to move this conversation right along. Did anyone watch The Power?
Yeah, honestly, I've never watched Power before.
Anyone? No one? Okay.
I know. I watched Power.
Okay. Did only I see the
I didn't know you watched Power, Selena.
I went to the premiere with 50 Cent. So
did it come back already, Power?
Yeah, the Series 6 came out. It's trending on Twitter.
I don't know if I could say this out loud, but I never watched Power. When I was gonna watch Power, you told me about a situation that happened with you and somebody from that show.
Oh, yes.
So after that, I was I'm definitely not watching that show.
No, you're right.
I don't know if I can say it publicly, so I'll just keep it vague like that.
No,
but after that, I was nah, definitely not watching Power.
No, I did get into a verbal dispute.
No. You were right. He was wrong and dumb and got disrespectful. Let's keep it clean.
I wrote an op-ed saying, "Dear Omari Hardwick, the Black Lives Matter movement was not just a hashtag." I had an incident and a run-in where, I think there was some miscommunication and misunderstanding between him and I published, I was really upset by it, and I published a whole publication about it about 4 to 5 years ago. I don't know if he read the article.
He raised his voice at you and got really disrespectful. I didn't forget.
You're right, Stanley. It was some words that were exchanged.
Yeah, so screw Power. I'm never watching that show.
Well, speaking of Power, last but not least, there is also a campaign for Mayor Bill de Blasio to come back to New York. Did you guys see the missing
No, don't come back. Don't come back, de Blasio.
Stanley, you don't want him to come do his job?
He doesn't do it now. Just listen. Yeah, you know I'm not supposed to talk about this, but whatever. I'll get yelled. I'm on vacation. They can't yell at me right now. Just go away. Leave.
Stanley, he did, and there's flyers all around New York City saying that Bill de Blasio is missing in action.
You could put that up when he's here. He can't even show up to his own office on time. How do you show up late to his office is in his house and he doesn't show up on time? Come on.
Not everyone is punctual, Stanley.
You feel like I'm coming for you, Selena? Nah.
I hit dog holler.
You ain't the mayor, Selena. You ain't the mayor.
Well, I'm gonna give Tiffany last words before we go on this commercial break.
I think Mayor de Blasio, he fumbled the bag. He had the opportunity to be a transformative mayor, and clearly we saw his biggest goals was to run for president. So
You're acting like he didn't install universal pre-K and got $15 minimum wage.
Whoa. Slow your roll, Selena. I know he made it seem like he did it, but that work was happening from groups like 32BJ, 1199, CWA, Citizen Action, Working Families Party, all those groups and regular working people made that happen. And Mayor de Blasio,
under his administration.
No, that happened at the state level, and he had to get funding at the state level. And Bill de Blasio definitely talked it up. He absolutely did. I want to give him his props for that. But that happened by regular people. Elected officials, 99% of the time, they're not just out here putting up good policies. We're forcing them to. And then they spike the football afterwards. Like Bill de Blasio didn't want to give half off Metro cards to people making under the poverty line. Mm-hmm. We had to force him to. And when the bill got passed, he came to the press conference like he was there with us the whole time. Like, come on, let's be honest about this.
He's a politician.
I'm on vacation with, as you can see.
Okay, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're talking about the 1619 Project.
I'm a wiggle it. I can't wiggle ish. Yesterday, I tried to do the stanky leg, and I definitely tripped. So, no stinky legs for Stanley.
You're old and washed.
I've been old and washed. We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm here with Tiffany Zaddy Pension Brown. And, of course, Selena. I got the media plug, Keys Hill, and we are having a great show. But before we go to the main event, I want to give the floor to Tiffany real quick because she has some important news for us and some thoughts to share.
So over the week, we saw a video of a young man named Reese. He was being bullied by a group of people over dating a trans woman by the name of Faith. And then subsequently, we learned that he committed suicide. And on Twitter, we saw this narrative about transphobia in the Black community, how we have to stop it. And I think that's all important. But I would also just like to note that we don't really know why Reese committed suicide. And Faith was also, his girlfriend was also talking to that he was suffering from like drug abuse and there was some intimate partner violence there. So I think before we like latch onto a narrative, like these all things can coexist within inside of a relationship in a society. Like you can be a part of transphobia, you could be, a domestic violence person, and you can also be dealing with drug abuse. And I just thought it was like irresponsible for some journalists that I saw that was really attaching this to the narrative. Like we do have to address in transphobia. We also have to address, drug abuse. We also have to address, intimate partner violence. So I think we can all talk about that without trying to push a particular narrative, because this was a very unfortunate case. And I do think a lot of our brothers and sisters within the trans community are dealing with this all at the same time. And I feel like we weren't doing justice enough when we were talking about the story.
Yeah, I was one of the people who all I saw was the first half of the story, and I said, I can't believe this. Mm-hmm. They drove this young man to kill himself all because he loved a trans woman. Mm-hmm. Then I saw his Facebook post. He's like, I love my girl no matter what. And I was like, damn, this is great. And then I saw her Facebook Live, and I was like, oh,
right.
There's a lot more to this than I thought.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Marsha P. Ambrosia Institute for sharing that information as well, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have known that. So make sure you folks are following that page as well. Marsha P. Johnson Institute. It's really good information, really good education, and just a great platform overall. So, Tiff, thank you very much for that update. Mm-hmm. So now that we've gotten to some things that were emotional and slightly problematic, we're going to shift into something else that's very emotional and slightly problematic. So, who in here has heard of the 1619 Project? Raise your hand.
Oh my. Great.
Selena's like, I mentioned it the first thing as soon as you started the show. But as you know, black men don't listen. We just project. Yeah, I feel like 5 black women was like, oh, no. Anyways, guys, the 1619 Project is a program organized by the New York Times with the goal of re-examining the legacy of slavery in the United States in time for the 400th anniversary of the arrival in America of the first enslaved people from West Africa. It's an interactive project by Nicole Hannah-Jones, a reporter from the New York Times, with contributions by the paper's writers, including essays, poems, short fiction, and a photo essay. Originally conceived of as a special issue for August 20th, it was soon turned into a full-fledged project, including coverage in the paper and on the website. So far now, you have the full project, which you can find on New York Times. There's also a podcast called 1619, which you can watch, you can listen to, and they have some short videos made, and it's really, really good. The project is expansive in many ways, and for example, there's a piece from Matthew Desmond that writes about how slavery shaped modern capitalism and workplace management norms. For example, you know where tips come from? Slaves. Mm-hmm. And also from free slaves, they didn't want to pay the black railroad workers, so their pay would pretty much be whatever folks would want to tip them. That's where that comes from. Now we know the majority of tip workers are women of color and women, but hey, no one cares about women, particularly black women or women of color, so we're not going to change that process, right? And then there's also James Jamel Bowie, who connects the early 19th century political efforts to preserve slavery to current conservative political movements like the Tea Party and its efforts to fully nullify federal authority. And then Kevin Cruz, this is my favorite one. He explains how the country's history of racism contributes to Atlanta's traffic issues. Traffic. Are we talking about traffic and slavery? That's wild to me. But anyways, folks, this is a really expansive, educational, interesting project that everyone should take a chance to look at. And if you don't like to read because you're not a nerd like me, then you can listen to the podcast, or you can watch the videos, or you can listen to the show. And if you haven't had a chance to engage in this, listen, you can engage with us. We're talking about it right now. But as we know, anytime something is done for black people, somebody's got to get mad and hit us with an all lives matter or say this is not true. And the usual suspects were there and some surprising people. So, for example, on Twitter, there was an indigenous activist who said she didn't understand why they were putting so much energy into the history of black people when indigenous people were here first, as if it was an oppression Olympics. She quickly deleted her tweet when Black Twitter converged and decided to drag her. But there were a lot of other people who felt the same way. And, you know, I'm going to editorialize a little bit. Sure, you're absolutely right. We should talk about your stories. But this was our time. Chill. Well, we can have our family fights within the family. We don't got to talk about that right now. But the pieces that were pretty much expected and also frustrating came from who else? The conservative right. So, for example, conservative commentator Eric Erickson wrote on his blog, The Resurgence, that the 1619 Project was a worthwhile endeavor, but one that failed when the New York Times put the project in the hands of opinion writers who profit from stoking and fueling quote-unquote racial grievances. He said it was a sentiment he felt and he will continue to feel because people are profiting off of, like, causing racial tensions. Sound familiar? They used to always say that about black activists in the South that were fighting for civil rights. Then, of course, Human Garbage Can, who left his dying wife, she was dying in the hospital, he left us to go to his new girl, Newt Gingrich. He said the 1619 Project was outright brainwashing, and then he went to Fox and Friends and said the whole project is a lie. So obviously the project has people thinking and talking and feeling all over the place, and we want to think and talk with you. So I want to start this conversation off and throw it to Tiffany first, actually, because she's the pension mommy, and ask you, did you read the series? And if so, what are your thoughts? How do you feel? If not, why not? And do you plan to?
I did read the series. I didn't read the entire series, but I did read some pieces, like the Atlanta piece and the opening piece. And I also watched some of the interviews that the creator put together. And it was eye-opening to me because I felt like it really made things contextualized for, like, the everyday person, like just relating it to, like, traffic issues and health issues. And I think sometimes people hear that in the abstract, but it's like, no, like, this is how slavery that people say, like, you know, just forget about it and move on, but how it impacts our everyday life. In the relation to the conservatives, I wasn't surprised. Like, you know, of course, you know, they're going to come out of the woodwork. But I was also just almost dumbfounded at how many of them was trying to center whiteness, even in slavery. I think the same one, Eric Erickson was saying that talking about this project in this way takes away from all of the good white people that were trying to end slavery.
Wait. Hold that thought, because I do want to get to that.
Yeah.
But I want to hold some space for that piece of the conversation. Okay. And Selena, don't worry, I'm not going to say anything radical. Yes, I am. Selena, have you had a chance to read it? If so, what do you think? If not, tell me if you're going to read it and what you think.
Look, I don't have a pension like Tiffany, so I can't afford a New York Times subscription. So I have not read the series.
Shots.
But shout out to Stanley for sending me the podcast because I was able to listen to it.
Wasn't it good, though?
It was really good. I was just like, yo, compared to
then you heard the water. You heard the water running, yo.
It was.
Our podcast is good, but 1619.
Yes, they better come on with.
They
the
better
production.
give us some ad money though. Damn.
That's they had like 3 or 4 ads throughout the podcast. Nonetheless,
sorry.
Here's my reaction because I was able to read up on it. I mean, I feel like the project really aims to reframe the legacy of slavery in America and to make clear the contributions that Black Americans have made besides just wealth and capital. as you know, we are ingrained and have helped build the infrastructure of this country. And not only that, a large part of this series talks about democracy. And what the writer does, she's a black woman. What she does is she says it was black people, black slaves, who really upheld the ideals of democracy, because when they wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were saying that, our country is built up on the ideals that every man was created equal under God, and that we're a democracy and we're the land of the free. Y'all know it. But it wasn't until black people fought to free themselves and fought for this country in the Civil War and on every other war that these ideals actually came into fruition and manifest. So what to me was brilliant about this piece is she actually claims that people of color, black people in particular, are the most patriotic of patriotic citizens in this country, because we are the ones that, despite our oppression, despite our enslavement, we continue to fight to uphold these ideals. And to me, that philosophy and ideology was so powerful and impactful.
Yo, that really was, Selena. Thank you. And one of the ways she mentioned it, what she talked about when Abraham Lincoln met with 4 black abolitionists.
Yes.
And Abraham Lincoln was like, yo, like, slavery is trash and everything, but, like, we got some money and y'all can go back to Africa. And they were like, where in Africa? He's like, Isn't Africa just a place? No, that's not exactly how it went. But then they were like, yo, we were born here. Our family has lived here and worked here and died here. This is as much as our country as it is yours. And they stayed. And this is like several years after the Haitian Revolution. So they had a couple of options of places they could have gone and just chilled. But they said this is our country and they want to stay. So that was really impactful. So, guys, if you have questions, comments, concerns, no curse words, give us a call at 212-650-6903. Again, that is 212-650-6903. You can also leave a comment on Facebook Live. We will make sure we get to you. If you're on the podcast and you can't hit us on there because there's no comment section, hit us up on Twitter and we'll make sure to spotlight you. Selena?
So Cleanna left a really interesting comment earlier in the show. She said, it made me think about the education we received in public schools about slavery and how it has been less than adequate and glosses over the details and the financial benefit enslaved folks were to owners in this country. I can imagine in school districts that were all white or predominantly white that there was no education, or maybe it was just a sentence in a textbook about slavery. I agree with you there, Cleanna.
That is an absolute fact. Thank you very much, Cleanna, for leaving a comment. So let's go to our next question. How does the legacy of slavery still affect people today? Does it? Well, actually, let's start with that. Does the legacy of slavery still impact us today? If you're watching on Facebook Live, leave some comments. We want to hear from you. If you're on the FM listening, call us. Let us know. But I want to start with you, Selena.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, this country was built on the backs of black people. But I think that a lot of us fail to remember or acknowledge the fact that we are still carrying that load to this day. The legacy of slavery, whether we acknowledge it or know it or not, it manifests in every part of our modern life. I think Tiffany mentioned how it's here in healthcare, public transportation, economic order, the inequalities of healthcare. Tiffany, can you expand on how the legacy of slavery is still affecting every aspect of our life?
I would just talk about, just like the health biases. Like, I think one of the articles talked about how that, when it comes to black people that were slaves during that time, that they were like measure like their work production and like based off like their lung capacity. And we're seeing that even in our healthcare today, especially when we talk about, the mortality rate for black women and how inherent biases are always, put on black women that, we could take more pain or that we're lying or whatever the case may be. And we can see how people are not like, necessarily looking at us as like, through a sympathetic lens when it comes to like healthcare. Additionally, we just have National Equal Pay Day for black women. We see that right now. Black women make 63 cents compared to our white man counterparts. So we see how it's playing out right here, in 2019.
Absolutely. Stanley, I know we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, guys. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the legacy of slavery still persists in 2019.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm here with Selena Hill and, of course, Tiffany Brown. FYI, gentlemen who don't cheat, Tiffany Brown's got a pension.
What the heck? Are you marketing her off?
I am no one's sugar mama, okay?
Listen. You don't got to be a sugar mama, but you can uplift somebody's checking account and their life.
Stay away from me, Brokey.
Listen, he's not broke. He just cash deficient. But anyways, folks, if you're just tuning in, we have been talking about the 1619 Project done by the New York Times that covers the 400-year legacy of slavery and blackness in America. And when we walked away, Tiffany was sharing some thoughts about the impacts of slavery on America today. Selena, did you have a comment on Facebook Live you want to share with us? All right, great. So if we got no comments, I'm going to keep the show on the road. So the next question I have for you guys. The 1619 Project argues that America was not a democracy until black Americans fought to make America one. That has pissed off a lot of white conservatives. They think that A, we're over-exaggerating the impact of slavery, and B, the impact of black people. Has either one of you read this article or heard this argument at all? What do you think about this? You think it's legitimate, Tiffany?
No. I feel like when you live a life where you can be mediocre your entire life and then someone tells you like, hey, you are unremarkable, and it was actually people that you think that are better, less than you, that actually is the reason why you exist. We see the legacy of slavery throughout, top, universities. We see the legacy of slavery through our railroad system. We see the legacy of through slavery through Wall Street. So to say that we are over exaggerating slavery, like we provided free labor for generations. So to say that, oh, we're over exaggerating or you didn't do that much, like how did you think you got this wealth?
So, folks, if you have a question, comment, no curse words, but thoughts, give us a call at 212-650-6903. Again, that's 212-650-6903. We're also reading comments on Facebook Live. I see you, Amy Jones. I see you, Dr. Tony Lewis. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Selena?
Yeah, so I would say that the criticism and the pushback we're getting from people like Newt Gingrich and others, it further illustrates why the 1619 Project is so impactful and why it's so necessary. I feel like what it really does is it delegitimizes the ideals and the so-called power of white supremacy, because basically it says that if you are someone who identifies with this ideology and are, have strong white nationalist politics, you need to understand the history behind that and the oppression and how, if you unpack things, to Tiffany's point, we were the ones who really built up this country, not only physically, but even like philosophically. Like we were the one who upheld these ideals. And I think that for white people, it's very challenging for them to surrender their idea of this identity. They think of white people as heroes and, the saviors. And we're like, no, that was a child rapist. That was a slave master. That's what really happened.
Yeah. So, Selena, you and I had this conversation on Thursday where we were talking about why white people why they get so upset and their chest puff up when we talk about this. And I think the thing that I said was, how would you feel if once every couple of weeks or couple of days, somebody came up to you and talked about how trash your family was and your ancestors were and all the crappy things they did and how you benefit from it now and how you would feel? I don't remember what your response was, but now that I'm bringing it up again, how would you feel if that was the case? You
know what, Stanley? I can't answer that question, nor can I empathize with them. I think that you framing it that way is great because you're trying to empathize with the oppressor at some point. No, but think about it, because you're saying, how would you feel? Yeah. I don't know how I would feel. I just know how it feels to be on the other end of that spectrum, and to the fact that my ancestors and my people, and even like me today, I still suffer from what they did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you say that, but a lot of conservatives, a lot of white people are saying we should move past slavery. And not just conservatives, but quote-unquote progressive allies are saying we should move past slavery. Tiffany, is it time to move past slavery?
No, and I think it's disrespectful to say move past slavery. I really think it's so, it frustrates me when I hear those, type of questions or comments, because, how could we move past slavery when we see so many ills of slavery represented, in 2019, like Selena was talking about. For us to move past slavery, we have to have, maybe a real conversation about reparations. We have to have a real conversation about mass incarceration and redlining and things that were symptoms of slavery that, created and maintained a racial hierarchy. So if we're going to move past slavery, we also have to move past so many symptoms that was the result of slavery. And no one's ready to have that conversation or have that conversation in a real way. So
So I have a comment from Dr. Tony Lewis, and she says, I was just talking to my mom about this. She said the reaction to this reminds her of when they first started doing Black History Month programs. Folks were all in their feelings and clutching pearls and all the things. Shows how much of their white people values is tied up on having a foot on someone else's neck. That ain't value. And then she also added how it feels. Clinically, you can see a lot of the time. Folks be flushed and hyperventilating and spitting and such. Watch closely the next time. Selena?
You know what? Obviously, I do not think we need to move past slavery, but I think what white folks need to move past is identifying as white. I feel like that is at the heart and like the central issue. They have so much time, resources, and energy invested in what it means to be white and these ideals and the supremacy that is attached to that based on history, that they want to continue this legacy. Yeah. If they would stop identifying as white, which is just a social construct, then and they identified as just being American, then they could embrace and empathize themselves with the full spectrum of American history, which is our dirty past.
Do you think that's possible, that white people can ever have an honest conversation and really be in a space to be held accountable for their dirty past?
If we keep sparking those flames, if we continue to push these narratives, if we continue to tell our truths, yes. And thank you to the New York Times and the brilliant Black journalists behind the 1619 Project, which is holding them accountable. They're holding the consciousness of this country accountable.
Tiffany, what do you think?
I think Jamel Bowie in his article touched on it. Like, some people just inherently believe that, you know, some people are inferior, right? So that's why we're okay with seeing a Black boy being shot down on camera and thinking like, oh, well, maybe if he just didn't resist arrest. So that's why we are okay with seeing, you know, brown children in cages. So I think once you divorce yourself from this ideal that some people deserve this sort of inhumane treatment, and additionally, I think similar to the way Black people have, you know, generational trauma, white people also have some form of trauma in believing that they are better than. So I think, you know, everyone has to do, white folks have to do the real work, like Selena said, of divorcing themselves from whiteness and understanding that you just existing as a white person is a benefit, and how you can do some other work to make sure that other people who are not rich or, you know, don't have white skin can also be a part of this society.
Selena, where do we go from here?
I think where we go from here is, now that the spotlight has been shown through the 1619 Project and a lot of the other, you know, activists, organizers, and truth tellers and storytellers who talk about this all the time, it's time for work. Right? You know, we have people like you, Stanley, like you're an organizer. You're constantly fighting against these social constructs and these the infrastructure and the like institutionalized racism on a local level and a state level. I think that we have to continue to empower activists like you and the organizations that you work for, and even let your voice be heard, because we're the ones also trying to inform, educate, and empower people to finally get rid of things like white supremacy and racism. I think that there's a lot of us on the ground doing the work. We just need to be amplified, funded, and empowered. And, you know, eventually we'll start to see even more changes.
Maybe the NFL will cut us a check. Tiff.
Jay-Z, we're here.
Social injustice initiatives. Tiff, where do we go from here?
I think where we go from here, definitely wholeheartedly agree with Selena say. I also think for Black people, I think we should not be so concerned about how white people are feeling in this moment, but keep telling our truths. I think white people need to get out of their feelings and maybe do some self-reflection and really, you know, not take this as a personal attack, but just like a reality that exists, but, you know, something that you can work on to be a better, you know, human in society. I think we definitely need to uplift people that are doing the work, like, you know, a Let Your Voice Be Heard or Citizen Action, like these sort of groups, or, you know, like a Black Youth Project that are really, like, you know, talking about these issues that, you know, impact marginalized and, you know, disenfranchised communities.
Selena, we have a quick comment you want
to
share?
Don L says, it's like the Matrix. They stay taking the blue pill and stay in dreamland, and they don't want to wake up to the reality.
Yeah, that's a really great thing to say, Donnell. Thank you so much for that. The fact of the matter is, the next steps here is we got to decolonize our minds. Now, we know white people got to decolonize their minds and wash their feet and season their chicken.
Legs.
and their legs too.
God.
But they absolutely have to decolonize their minds, because whiteness is nothing but a made-up construct that also serves as a parasite, and it sucks up everything. That's the only way it can survive. So it takes your culture, it takes the lives of other people, it takes creativity, and it whitewashes it until it's nothing but this nice tight package of privilege, power, and violence. And that's all it's ever been. And until we decolonize our minds and we destroy whiteness, we're going to be having this straight up cycle of white supremacy, dirty feet, unseasoned chicken, racist violence happening across the world. As for black folks in this space and non-black people of color, the only way we liberate ourselves is if we liberate each other. And if we want to liberate each other, you gotta be about black liberation. For the white people who are listening, who are decolonizing their minds, but they want more advice on what they can do, it's pretty straightforward. Cut the check. We need our reparations. With that being said, my mic is dropped. Selena, take us home.
Well, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in to Let Your Voice Be Heard, especially all those on our Facebook Live. We see your comments. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to them all, but we definitely appreciate all of your engagement. I want to thank Tiffany for joining us again, always coming through with the smart comments and the black girl magic. And I want to thank everyone who is a subscriber to us on patreon.com. And if you aren't, you can go to patreon.com/BeHeardRadio and become a subscriber. And by doing that and supporting us, we will continue to support the issues and the causes that matter to you.